back on the incredible women that I met and how hard they worked. And I just envisioned a future where women didn't have to choose between their families and their careers. And so really built the Mom Project with that mission at our core to unlock the dormant strengths of moms in the economy. We know this is $100 billion plus opportunity. So it's been such a humbling journey over the last 5 years to really start to make impact at scale. We're incredibly proud that to date we've connected our moms with over 100 million in earnings through the platform, and we're just getting started, Alda. So thank you for being an early believer.
Absolutely. As a mother of three myself, I can totally empathize with the daily struggle of balancing everything, especially with distance learning. And I read that even during this shelter in place and the pandemic, across the country, mothers are spending 15 more hours on average than fathers a week on household duties. And I certainly feel like that's true in my home. I know that you have spent time at the Mom Project really studying the impact of the pandemic on parents and households and women, and recently released a survey about the impact of moms in the workplace. One thing that really stood out to me in that survey was that 61% of women reported having put their careers on pause during COVID, which is obviously a very disturbing statistic. Can you talk more about that and what we can do to fight that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've looked at the pandemic, now that we're about a year in, across 3 phases. And it's so interesting. If we looked at the beginning of 2020, women were absolutely entering the year on such a high, record levels of employment. We started to see female labor participation rate rise after having stagnated for over 30 years. And a lot of that was driven by growth in healthcare, education. And then it came to a screeching halt during March. And so we saw really the first wave of impact on women in the workplace was the impact of pandemic related job losses. So we saw that about 60% of women who were impacted by job losses or furloughs were jobs held by women. And a lot of that was because of their representation in sectors like healthcare, hospitality, retail, a lot of frontline workers. And so that was kind of hit number one at the onset. And then over the next couple of months, we started seeing schools starting to close, daycares, which are really the fabric of many families, households, kind of fragile structure, start to unwind. And daycare centers had to shut their doors. These are businesses that operate on super slim margins. And many schools shifted to remote learning. And so we saw moms, by and large, carried that weight. So not only had to bring home that income for their family, but they also had to transition to become educators and full-time household managers, which has really fueled the sobering statistic that over 2 million women have left the workforce in the last 12 months, really unraveling decades worth of progress. And so we've looked at it on kind of several different fronts, Alda, and have conducted probably about 6 research papers over the last 9 months. We have a PhD on our team, Dr. Cohen, who leads this work and is a trained behavioral scientist to really understand what is the pulse for moms across America, across all different demographics. And our most recent report really highlighted the impact that the pandemic has happened for moms of color. And we saw that across our 2,000 person study, about 1 in 5 of moms have left the workforce. But what's really concerning is that of that subsegment, where 22% were Black moms, 20% were Asian moms, and 19% were Latina moms. So we're really seeing that moms of color have been impacted the most. And so we need to take bold action to stop this backslide and really create more support structure for her.
Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of having more moms in the workforce, what impact it has on a company, and in particular, obviously, I'm more interested in the positive impacts of having moms as managers and senior roles at companies?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, we were really looking for data to really back, because we all know moms make incredible employees, they make better managers, they make better leaders. And what we found was really a dearth of our information to support that from a research or data perspective. And so we conducted our own through Work Labs, our Insights and Research division, and that absolutely bore out in the numbers. We conducted a research asking employees to state differences between moms as managers and non-moms. And what we found is that when moms are in leadership roles as managers or CEO, they lead to more productive workplaces, more equitable workplaces, more fair workplaces, and higher productivity levels. So all the data is really there, Alda, that moms make incredible leaders. They make tremendous assets to any organization.
And one of your surveys also said that that 80% of female employees reported that with a mother as the CEO of their company, diversity and inclusion felt like more of a priority. Can you talk a little bit about what the benefits of having, a prioritization around diversity and inclusion have for any company?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say before we go into DEI, one of the most interesting findings from that research is that we found that when moms are in positions of leadership, employees perceive them as being much more approachable and much more empathetic, much more inclusive and approachable, great communicators, and employees generally just feel more informed throughout the organization at all levels. And I think that absolutely translates into higher commitment levels of diversity and inclusion. I think, for those of us that have faced adversity, and that has many different forms, perhaps there's a heightened awareness and desire to create more equal, accessible opportunities for those that don't look like us. I know that's certainly true for me. I feel like, a lot of people betted on me, like you, Alda, and so I really want to pay that forward. So yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And the numbers did show that employees feel the same way when moms are managers, that they really tangibly feel an increased focus on DE&I.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way in terms of investment approach. I grew up in Texas. There were probably 2 Chinese families in my whole school. And even though now I'm in San Francisco and not necessarily as much of an outsider, especially being in tech here, grew up feeling like an outsider and really understand the value and the large market that exists in targeting those types of underserved communities. And so that part of your survey really did resonate with me. I think that you're now working on a project that's more closely targeted on diversity with the launch of your Diverse Talent Cloud projects. Can you tell me how that would appeal to companies and what the product is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Alda, as you know, a big piece of our work composition at the Mom Project is project-based work. We've seen that that's just the way that the workforce is trending that way. We predict by 2023 that will represent more than half of all American workers. And what we see is that companies' commitment to diversity for their full-time workforce is now transferring over to their contingent workforce, because what we saw is companies were making great progress, really moving the needle on their FTE workforce, but then looking to say their contingent workforce, which could be upwards of 30-40% of their total staff, was not diverse. And so we're so excited to bring Diverse Talent Cloud to market. It allows customers to guarantee representation across kind of all spectrums of diversity, whether that be gender, ethnicity, disability. So the Mom Project, through our Diverse Talent Cloud, is really curating that, and we've got other suppliers who focus on other aspects of diversity, partnering with us on this journey. And I am just so excited about this work, Alda. There's billions and billions of dollars that flow through these contingent workforce systems. And I am so excited to bring diversity to the forefront. And I think specifically, you look at these great project-based jobs, right, at Facebook or Google or Apple, where have you, diverse candidates have not historically even really known that these existed, and could be a great pipeline into full-time opportunities. So I'm really excited to bring them into the fold, make these opportunities accessible to a much more diverse population. And I think remote is the lever that just makes this so huge, because we're now seeing more companies, even for their contingent work, are moving towards remote. And so, we can find people in Texas, we can find them in Massachusetts, Kansas, wherever these people live, and bring them great opportunities to family-friendly employers that will offer them great benefits and will support them both as professionals, but as humans.
Well, you mentioned benefits, and I think some people might have the perception that project-based labor or contingent labor is not able to receive the same level of benefits. So what types of shifts have you been seeing as companies increase their contingent or project-based workforce in terms of benefits?
So absolutely. This is, and sort of many people think about, at least something I think about, is what is that employee experience for if I'm a full-time worker? And I hear stories of people who transition from being an FTE to a contractor and really hearing kind of that contrast. And so we want to bridge those worlds. And so we think about this in terms of what is that social contract for those contingent workers, and really, like, how do we up level those criteria? So we're seeing a lot of good work going against benefits. Most temporary workers getting projects through the Mom Project, at least at the Fortune 1000, are getting great benefits. Some are even getting amazing benefits like childcare credits. So I think you're going to start to see that shift change, and as more of the workforce becomes project-based, you're going to see benefits catch up, and just a real kind of willingness and desire for companies to make that a really great experience, similar to how their full-time employees feel, because they want to, this is a great pipeline strategy for them. That best talent that come in as project workers, they want them to have a great experience. So if they so choose, they could convert to become a full-time employee.
And is working with the Mom Project something that's limited to larger companies? How can smaller companies take advantage of what you're offering?
No, what I love about our business, and you probably appreciate as our investor, Alda, is like, we can sell to anybody that's hiring or needs great talent. The Mom Project can be a solution for. So we have thousands and thousands of companies hiring through the platform. Certainly we serve kind of the Fortune 10, but we also serve 1, 2, 3 person companies just getting started. And it tends to be a really great fit for those smaller companies who maybe don't want or need full-time employees, but they need somebody super talented who can hit the ground running on day one to manage their finance or their legal work or their PR. And so, I'm the daughter of a small business owner, so I've got a really special place in my heart for fast-growing small businesses and startups, and that's a really fast-growing piece of our customer portfolio.
And as far as the diverse talent clouds goes, like how does it work? And I like genuinely would love to put myself in the position of a company and how we could work with you to diversify, our talent base, and certainly venture capital funds are also small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all starts with what are the objectives that the customer is trying to solve. So they're typically telling us we want to see 90% gender representation. We want to see 50% ethnic representation, really getting very crystal clear on their diversity goals. And through our match science, we're curating the best of talent from the Mom Project marketplace and creating these cloud communities of talent for our customers who meet that criteria. So let's say we're working with a legal team at a mid-sized company, and they want kind of a legal bench of talent that they can continue to hire and redeploy across the organization as they do great work. And so it's a really kind of curated experience. We handle all the payment and processing, and it's similar to an e-commerce experience where you need something, the talent's there on the ready. They meet all of your criteria. They're ready to hit the ground running. And the Mom Project handles all of the payment processing, background checks. So you can just get started doing great work.
What are some other ways we can support parents, working parents, and mothers, especially during this tough time? Outside of the Mom Project, are there sort of regulatory efforts that you think we should be putting some more force behind, or other initiatives at the company level?
Yeah, well, I think the pandemic has represented such a amazing opportunity for us to rethink how work gets done. So number one, I would say if you haven't already, really think through your work structure and how you can adapt them to reach a more diverse population. And if you're remote right now, consider staying remote for the future, or consider a hybrid approach and survey the parents, your entire employee population, to hear they're probably feeling very anxious. I don't think you can over communicate right now with your teams to really understand what they need to be successful, because I really fear a third exodus from the workplace for parents if they're forced to go back into an office without schools having fully reopened. So I would really
I think we lost Allison. Let's give her a couple of minutes to log back in. Speaking of remote work, with sort of having to communicate over sometimes questionable internet and from different locations, I think this is something that not only moms and parents have to deal with. How would you advise companies that are thinking about going to fully remote or this hybrid model like you discussed?
Yeah, I think really doing an audit of your communications is one that I think is really important. I think right now, with more employees working kind of unconventional hours, things like asynchronous meetings, and really just transparent information, so teams can be empowered to make the right decisions with the right context, is key. I think that's one of the things that we've kind of lost as we shifted. The rate of change at a startup happens so quickly, and so really making sure that the team has the proper context. So a bit of a communications audit, I think, is really important, and I can't emphasize enough just really continuing to do listening tours of your employees. On top of the pandemic and the healthcare crisis and the unraveling of our childcare infrastructure shift to remote, so many employees are dealing with a lot of socio-emotional struggles right now. And we know that there's unprecedented levels of mental health issues. So looking at benefits that can really help that person bring their best self to work, I think will go a really long way in not only helping that individual, but creating a high performance culture.
I've read that while you might get more productivity through a remote work model, for the individual employee, it might be harder for you to get promoted and move up at the company. Is that true? And what are ways to combat that?
That's absolutely true. People are missing the exposure to leadership that, they got at happy hour or the water cooler chatter. And so I think as leaders, we have to be very intentional because it's easy to kind of get caught in our routine to be reaching across all levels of the organization for one-on-ones, helping these employees maybe outside of our direct reporting lines, feeling really engaged, feeling very connected to the company's objectives and how they really contribute to the company's success, I think goes a really long way. Of course, weekly or monthly all hands recognition is really important right now because people are working more than ever. And, you know, it feels never ending, right? And because of technology, people can reach us at all hours of the day. And so I think, you know, we've got to lead from the front. I told my team, I lock away my phone in the evenings right now. Like, we've got to set limits for ourselves, and as managers support that and lead by an example.
So what do you think is next for the Mom Project, and are there other efforts you're working on to sort of target bringing more women back into the workforce as we get out of COVID?
Yeah, Alda, I think what this pandemic has shown me is our mission has never been more important. The letters that women have written me over the last 3 to 6 months, they strike a new chord. And so for me, it's this tremendous amount of urgency and responsibility to get the 2 million moms back to work who had to leave last year, and really calling on our partners to join us in this mission. And I think a more urgent way. Like, now is not the time to kind of pilot ideas. Like, now is the time for sweeping changes. I think you saw last week we announced our partnership with Accenture. We're starting in the Midwest. They've committed to making 150 hires through the Mom Project. And just kind of the outpouring that we saw, like there's such a need for this. And so as we look across the next 3 to 5 years, you know, I hope to be serving a global presence in the next 5 years. We know that this pain point is not unique to the US. We've got to stay focused and do the good work here. But ultimately, we're on a mission to serve millions and millions of moms and families, because I truly believe when you can empower mom financially, you're lifting up not only her, but her children, her family, her community. And there's so many incredible downstream positive impacts to society.
One thing that's been striking to me over the last year is, you know, the economy has been really, really active. The stock market, you know, was a little bit down today, but it's been by and large extremely bullish. And it stands as a sharp contrast to sort of this trend that we're seeing in terms of mothers and mothers of color. In San Francisco, we have you know, private schools who've been meeting back in person for several months now versus public schools who have not been able to meet in person. And you know, that economic divide is something that's really troubling. How can people who want to be employed and get back into the work system, how can they use the Mom Project and get jobs that are fit for what they're looking for?
You're absolutely right, Alda. There's been real winners and losers of the pandemic. And, you know, I attribute a lot of that to the K-shaped recovery, right? Like, highly skilled workers actually doing pretty well. It's those people in hourly jobs in retail, service. And so how do we help up-level them and create pathways into fast-growing fields like technology? So one of the initiatives that we're working on at the Mom Project that I'm really excited about to specifically kind of help up-level those moms is an initiative called Rise, where we've committed to upskilling 10,000 moms of color over the next 3 years by awarding them free scholarships for technical certifications with Google, Microsoft, Apple, and kind of a growing mix to also include healthcare. And so I think for those of us in positions of power, we've got to think about how are we bridging that divide? It's something that I think about a lot, and clearly the economy is just shifting more and more tech, right? How do we bring more and more people across middle America who might not have had access to those opportunities along this growth journey with us?
And have you felt that there's been a receptiveness with large and small businesses to diversifying their employees?
I absolutely do. And I know there's a bit of a selection bias because the companies that we work with are probably further along in their evolution, but absolutely, I think the role of a CEO at a Fortune 500 company adds social responsibility to that list as a key tenet. And so I've been really impressed by leaders that I've had the opportunity to work with. I think there's such an unwavering commitment. The question has been the how. How do we put this commitment into practice? And I think, that's largely been why the Mom Project has been so successful, because we've been just such a practical solution, whether it be gender diversity, ethnic diversity, to help these companies translate their commitment into action and impact.
And you talked about sort of across the country, including sort of middle states, which, I know the Mom Project was launched out of Chicago, and that you guys are now in Cleveland. Are sort of the companies that are being launched out of those geographical areas also experiencing the same resurgence that we're seeing in more traditional technology sector?
In terms of the job growth, yes, I don't think it's the explosive growth though that you see in the Bay Area or even kind of pockets like Atlanta. I think in the Midwest, personally, I would love to see more. I think you've got all of the right ingredients. You've got this incredible ecosystem of some of the best higher ed. You've got such a diversification of the economy, agriculture, corporate. Some, for whatever reason, it's been slow to get off the ground, but I think there's so many great entrepreneurs who are reinvesting back into the ecosystem. I hope it starts to change. I know as a female founder, there's not too many examples to point to. And so I think the Midwest particularly, people really like to give back. So I think hopefully as we see more companies have successful outcomes, we'll start to see that change.
And what do you think about, I think what you're offering appeals to a lot of people who are looking for jobs in terms of project-based and exciting work, high-level jobs, remote work. How do you feel about broadening your purview to, dads or just people who are interested in remote work in general?
Yeah, it's a great question. Although these are great opportunities with some of the best brands in the world, with an emphasis on flexibility and respect. And you kind of say, who doesn't want those jobs, right? So I totally hear you. I think for me, it's always been kind of staying focused. I have just felt like moms in particular have paid such a penalty. And dads actually get a pay increase when they become fathers, but moms see a very negative impact. So I think, we've got to continue elevating moms, but I think there's a real opportunity as we look down the road to broaden. I think, we're right now so family focused, and we are an equal opportunity platform. Certainly anyone that identifies with our mission is welcome to participate and engage with work on the platform. But from a branding perspective, I don't know what that looks like yet.
Well, and certainly there are, men on the site today who are finding and receiving great offers. But my next question has to do with sort of the childcare issue, which is so much tied into all of this. How do you think about childcare, and are you seeing more companies offer these childcare credits that you speak about and childcare solutions? And how does that fit in with more remote work?
Yeah, I think childcare, if we can find a real solution to the childcare crisis, it is the single biggest needle mover in terms of moms being able to participate in the workplace. We actually saw in DC, they introduced a universal pre-K, and they saw the maternal labor participation rate rise by 12 points. that is massive. We're talking about cities like San Francisco, billions of dollars in GDP waiting to be tapped. So I think, childcare, and I'm encouraged with the new administration, this will finally get the investment. I think it's become a bipartisan topic, and the challenge has really been, how do we fund it? So, we've done a little bit of policy work, but I think, in terms of kind of mom project policy perspective, it comes down to childcare, paid family leave, flexible work environments, equal pay for equal work.
And how did DC fund their program?
That's a great question. I should know that. I'm not sure if it was employer tax. I'm not sure. I'll look it up and let you know.
No problem. We can all look it up too. Touching upon pay equality, what can we do to promote equal pay for equal work?
Yeah. Well, if you're sitting inside a company and, in charge of hiring, compensation decisions, I would, take a very data-based approach to your current compensation and discover and raise any gaps. Alda, I know you've shared with us compensation data that has been really, really helpful. So we've got kind of now clear bands. So I think that's number one. And number two is just being aware of that it exists. Specifically, as we look at the gender pay gap, so much of it is a motherhood pay penalty. And moms make, more than 20 less cents than what dad makes. And a lot of that comes down to unconscious bias. So maybe it's interviewing a mom who has a 3-year gap on her resume and just kind of disqualifying her credentials because of that. And so I think really being aware of those biases that exist can really go a long way in helping close that gender pay gap.
I mean, you're presupposing that the company was incentivized to close the pay gap, and I think that is idealistically the case, but maybe not necessarily the case, because the company also has to worry about their bottom line and keeping their expenses down. I've been really interested in how we can empower employees, and certainly one way is having more pay transparency. But we've seen, very few companies that move to having, transparent pay system, and among our portfolio, we have had companies that pay for comp surveys, and I share them as broadly as I can across our portfolio companies for this purpose, but that's still at the company level and not at the employee level. Have you guys thought about doing any surveys or run any surveys on and sharing those with your workforce?
Yeah, that's such a great point, Alda. And I know one of the things that users love about using the Mom Project is, for most jobs, employers are posting that compensation up front. And so, there's no ambiguity around what that job pays. It is what it is. And you can opt in if you feel like that's adequately to your skill level. I think in terms of empowering people to know their worth is a key theme that you would see kind of built into our growth strategy. I think there's a couple of different angles. One, we encourage certainly all talent to do third market comp data and really know what their market rate is, to be able to, whether that's looking for a new role or negotiate a pay increase at your current employer. So really empowering through data. At the Mom Project, we're looking at ways to kind of help that on our supply side for the moms to really kind of, because for women who have been out of the workplace, they're like, I have no idea actually what I should be making. Like, do I need to discount the 3 years that I was doing volunteering because that was real work? Why shouldn't that count? And so I think really as we shift from a resume to a true skills and competency workplace, these things will become much less opaque.
And you're alluding to this now, but the community that you've built of mothers and the resources that you offer on the Mom Project community, So it's going beyond just sort of resume building. Do you also work on the employer side and guide them on what the right pay scale should be for a particular position?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's so incredible about this platform that we're building is the reach. And we've got this consumer audience of over 400,000 growing by 20,000 a month, and really supporting these users not only with the right job opportunity, but so many other opportunities when it comes to kind of the messiness of the work-life equation, whether that be connecting them with somebody who's just had a similar experience getting back to work, or navigating a really hard maternity paternity leave. And we believe so strongly, as I know you do, in the power of community. How do we like unlock that and bring our users together, because there's so much beauty in these shared experiences. And then on the employer side, it's interesting. I discovered pretty early on that companies were looking to us for the answers, generally on diversity and inclusion. And certainly we were kind of focused on mothers and families, but we've seen this kind of corporate just increase in investment and focus on this topic. And so it's been so neat for us to have conversations at a very senior level around what best practices are, whether it be compensation, benefits. We love helping companies kind of reimagine their parental leave experience. For many companies, that's a huge flight risk moment in somebody's career. And by kind of simple improvements like allowing somebody to flex back in rather than having to come back at a full 40 can make the world of difference. So yeah, we love consulting, if you will, just sharing best practices. We also often get invited to companies' ERGs, employee resource groups, to talk about best practices, what we're hearing. And it's such like a morale booster. Employees love knowing that their leaders are working with a mom project, because it sets that message that, wow, my company cares about moms and parents. Now I feel more empowered to go ask my manager for that extra day off that I so desperately need to go pick up my kid from school. And it's almost like a cultural movement.
That's awesome. I love how you gave specific, we've talked a lot about sort of the hiring process, but we haven't talked as much about retention and retaining the valuable workforce that you already have, which is obviously, the other side of the coin, because once you bring in someone really talented, you want to retain them. Unfortunately, I think we're out of time. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I appreciate your thoughts on how we can do better and bring more strength to the American workforce.
Thank you so much for having me, Aldo. It was a pleasure.